It's a thin piece of plastic, a symbol of both convenience and consumerism. It promises instant gratification, tempting us with rewards and the illusion of endless spending power. Yet it's also responsible for trillions of dollars in debt, countless financial headaches, and a culture that often prioritizes spending over saving. We're talking, of course, about the credit card. Have you ever wondered how this piece of plastic became so ingrained in our culture? And contrary to popular belief, this wasn't always the case. So, how did it transform from a luxury reserved for the elite to a staple in the wallets of millions and millions of people worldwide? And more importantly, how did it manage to reshape our entire relationship with money? We're going to talk about that here today. Stay tuned. This is the Debt Free Dad podcast, where we help normal, everyday people take control of their finances so they can live a less stressful life. My name is Ryan Nelson, and my wife and I paid off about $160,000 over 8 years while raising three kids. So, today I want to share and talk about the history of credit. And the main reason I want to talk about this today is this was a big thing we did at the beginning of our journey. And I think it really helped from an education standpoint get an understanding that this idea of credit is not always the way it was. So let's rewind a bit and trace the roots of credit in the 20th century. Because the credit card as we know it, it just didn't appear out of nowhere. It evolved from earlier forms of credit that laid the groundwork for this buy now, pay later culture we live in. In the early 1900s, the concept of credit was already taking hold. Department stores and local shops were offering charge accounts to their loyal customers. These accounts allowed people to purchase goods on credit and pay them off over time, usually with interest. Then in the 1920s, installment plans became popular. This allowed people to purchase big ticket items like cars and appliances and pay them in monthly installments. Henry Ford actually hated General Motors when they offered financing for their vehicles, but eventually he fell in line as well because consumers were demanding it. These early forms of credit were limited in scope. They were usually tied to a specific merchant or a type of purchase, but the seeds had been planted. In the 1950s, the first modern credit cards emerged. Diners Club, followed by American Express and others, offered a new level of convenience and flexibility. You could now use a single credit card to make purchases at a variety of businesses. These early credit cards were still primarily targeted at businessmen and travelers. But as banks entered the market, yes, banks, remember, they're there to make money. As the banks entered the market, credit cards became more accessible to the general public. By the 1960s and 1970s, credit cards were becoming increasingly popular. Companies started using sophisticated marketing tactics, appealing to our emotions and desires to encourage us to use our cards. And if you take a moment to think about that, that's what we're doing. This was in the 60s and 70s. 50 years later, this is what we're still doing. Think of the car commercials that you see on TV. Are they marketing the latest features of the car, the latest uh, backup camera technology, the latest safety technology? Are they marketing the bigger engine? No. Most car commercials that you watch, in fact, I would say probably almost all car commercials that you watch, are tuning into the emotions and they're tuning into the psyche of if I buy this car, I'm going to be respected. People are going to look at me. People are going to notice me. And that's how they get you. That's what they've learned how to do so well over all these years. They used imagery of happy families and carefree lifestyles to create a link between credit card spending and happiness, right? I mean, that's what they're doing. They offer rewards programs, cashback incentives, and they make us feel like we're getting something back, even as the interest charges are piling up. The rise of credit cards, it also coincided with a shift in societal values. Consumerism, especially in the United States, became a driving force in our culture. It still is. It's fueled by advertising, easy access to credit. We were and we are encouraged to buy things we don't need, to keep up with the Joneses, to define our worth through our possessions. And that $160,000 I talked about at the beginning of this, that's what all that money represented to us, keeping up with the Joneses, defining our worth through our possessions. By the 1980s, credit card debt was becoming a major problem. But instead of pulling back, the financial industry doubled down. They created new types of cards with higher credit limits and more tempting rewards. They also made it easier to get approved for a card, even if you had shaky credit history. And this led to a further explosion of credit card debt in the 1990s and 2000s. And with the rise of the internet, it's become even easier to spend money we don't have. Online shopping, one click purchases, autofill for credit card, buy now, pay later. They all contribute to a culture of instant gratification and impulse buying. And right now, we are looking at the highest credit card debt in history. Today, credit cards are deeply ingrained in our lives. We use them for everything from groceries to gas to online subscriptions. I remember my mom saying growing up, you'll always have a credit card. And for many of us, they're our primary way of paying things. But the debt that they've created has also become a major burden for millions and millions of people. Understanding how credit has evolved, how it's been marketed to us, and the psychological tricks that have been used to encourage spending. It's not just an academic exercise. I'm not just doing this to teach you history. It's essential for gaining control of your financial life. And this was one of the key things we did at the beginning of our journey. When you know the history, when you understand it, you can start to see through the marketing campaigns and the tempting rewards programs. You can start to recognize the cues that trigger your spending, your impulses, and we can make more conscious choices about how we use credit or if we use it at all. I think the biggest thing we learned through this whole process is banks and the credit industry are not your friend. They are there to make money. We can use this information to start to question the cultural norms that have normalized debt and made overspending seem normal. The paycheck to paycheck lifestyle, it seems normal. We can challenge the idea that we need the latest gadgets or designer clothes to be happy or successful. That was one of the big habits we kicked when we got out of debt. We used to buy things to make us happy, and they'd work for a month or two, and then we'd be miserable, and then we'd be right back to buying things to make us happy. By understanding the history of credit, we empower ourselves to break free from the cycle of debt and consumerism. We can learn to prioritize saving over spending, to value experiences over material possessions, and to build a healthier relationship with money. So next time you reach for that credit card or you reach for the buy now, pay later stuff, just take a moment and reflect on what we've talked about here today. I encourage you to go out there and learn about this stuff. Remember that there's power in marketing, the allure of instant gratification, and there's a true cost to this debt. Remember when you're shopping and they're like, do you want this card? You can get it today, bring it home. They're queuing in your emotion. They're not queuing in on what's best for you. And remember, you have the power to make different choices. It's your financial future, and it's up to you to shape it. If you want to take the next step with your finances, head over to debtfreedad.com, where we have a free Life Without Payments workshop with tons of great information to help get you started. I want to thank you for listening today, and we will see you on an upcoming episode. Take care.